But anyway, we're at the point here where we're talking about your value proposition. And let's talk about that just real broadly. It's a small enough group of 7 people. I'm going to do something brave. I'm going to unmute all of you guys. And I want to just have a quick conversation going in terms of how do you think about your value proposition? What does value proposition even mean to you guys? Right? I see Patty's here, Christina's here, Bonnie's here, George is here. I'm trying to unmute you all. How would you think about your value proposition? What does that even mean?
What you bring to the table for the client, what differentiates you?
Oh man, you just said about 3 different things there. What you bring to the table, what makes you different, right? All of that stuff. Because there's a value proposition, and then if you really want to be successful, there's a unique value proposition, right? Which talks about how do you bring value that other people don't, right? Anything else that you think about when you think about your value proposition?
I think it makes me different.
Who is that?
Patty.
Oh, Patty, how are you?
Good, thank you. But I think it's like what differentiates you, what makes you different.
Yeah. You know, and one of the things, you're right, it is all those things, but the key word for me in this is value. Who decides what's valuable?
The client.
The consumer, the client, right? And so one of the things that we have to make sure of when we're thinking about our value proposition is, are we on the same page? Am I giving them the value that they believe is valuable, or am I deciding what I think is valuable and trying to sell you on it? Because I'm going to tell you that the second one is way harder, right? There are rare instances where entrepreneurs create a new widget that is so cool that people didn't know how badly they needed it until they had it. It is really hard to create the next iPhone or the next Uber. It's just this coolest thing. I didn't even know how much I missed it until I had it. For most of us, what we have to do is we have to know what the consumer believes is valuable and build a product that serves that need. And from a real entrepreneurial perspective, what an entrepreneur does different than other people, the way they think about creating value, is they look for the gap in the market. What they look for is, what are consumers not getting that they want to get? And how can I build a product or service that attends to that need and fills a void, rather than how do I find a way to try to piggyback on what consumers like and try to do it in a way that's better than everybody else? It's really hard to compete by being a better version of an existing product. It's easier to compete by trying to figure out, where's there a pain point that's not being met well, and how do I have a way to do it differently to fill that void? And I'm going to tell you that it's not as hard as you think in real estate. And you think about real estate, which is a transactional business. We all do certain things in certain ways. I'm going to take a listing and I'm going to fill out paperwork. I'm going to put a sign in the ground. And you know what? I can't really put my sign in the ground any better than another agent can put their sign in the ground. But the way that we differentiate ourselves is going to be in terms of knowledge. The way we differentiate ourselves is going to be in terms of service. Because those are places where there's a real gap in our industry. You know, we all know that there's a gazillion real estate agents out there. And I tell the joke sometimes about when my daughter turned 21 and got her first legal drink, and I took her out and she sort of said to me, "Dad, I don't have to use this anymore." And she gave me her fake ID. And I said, "Thank you for coughing up this ID. I knew you had it," right? But she's 21 years old at that point. She looked like she's about 16. She's 26 years old now. She looks like she's about 16. She gets carded all the time. But on that particular night, she was waiting for it. She was excited. She had her license. She went to the bar. She ordered her drink, and the bartender said to her, "You know what? I'm going to need some ID. Can you give me a copy of your real estate license?" And she said, wait, what? She says, "Yeah, I'm going to need your real estate license." She says, "I don't have a real estate license. I mean, I have this driver's license." She says, "I guess if I have to accept that, but, I asked for, a real estate license because more people have those," right? Bad jokes, lame joke. Wasn't even all that funny. The point is, there's a ton of competition out there. There's a ton of competition. And one of the things, if you're not familiar with this, I just want you to know this. There was a study conducted in 2015 by your National Realtor Association, NAR, and they conducted what was called the Danger Report. I've talked about it in some other classes, and maybe you've heard of it, but in 2015, the National Association of Realtors is trying to determine what is the biggest threat to our industry. What is the biggest threat to residential real estate primarily? And they looked at competitive business models. They looked at technology innovations. They looked at the discounters and all kinds of different things. They looked at web-based companies, all the different things that were disruptors. And they determined that the greatest threat to the professional realtor today is crappy realtors. And their exact statement was, this industry is full of part-time, undertrained, unethical, unprepared realtors who are doing a terrible job and destroying the reputation of the professionals in this industry. That is your professional organization describing what they determined to be the biggest threat to your life. How do you think of that? It's painful to think of that, you know, and as a trainer, I'm up at night thinking about how do we fix that, right? So, but the point is, it's out there. A lot of realtors just aren't that good. And I'm not happy about that, but it is real. And so if you're gonna create more value than anyone else, for starters, the good news is the bar's kind of low. That's also the bad news. But the good news is, even in a transactional industry where we do things that are so much the same as everybody else, there's places where we can separate ourselves. And we're going to talk about that today. So let's just jump right in. As always in this course, we start with what do professional real estate agents do every day? And we know that successful agents do two things. They grow their business, they run their business, right? And today we're going to really talk about how this factors into all of that. I did just mute everyone again. I had us unmuted. There's starting to be a little bit of noise in the background. So if you have something that you want to share or a question, just unmute or throw it in chat and we'll go from there. So let's start. Your value. What makes you different? What is the thing that separates you from your peers? You know, we want to think about crafting a simple and precise description, not of what we do so much, but of the benefits, right? I oftentimes think that when we go out to social events and people ask, what do you do? And a lot of times what I hear people say, and I do this as well sometimes, is people say, you know, I'm a realtor. I hate that answer, not because I'm not proud of our industry. I hate that answer because people think they know what that means. And they have a bias and they think, you know, realtors are what they are. We know what you do. You're overpaid, you're pushy, you're all these different things. It's not usually a great bias, but people think, yeah, I know what that is. There's really no reason for me to discuss anymore. And I don't really want to get too close to you because the next thing you know, you're going to be asking me for a lead, or you're going to be asking me for my email address, and you're going to start spamming me and all of this crap, right? But the truth is, if we described what we did in terms of the benefits that we provide to people, not the title that we have or the functions that we do immediately, what that does is it creates curiosity, right? What do? You know, I help young couples find a piece of the American dream. Okay, tell me more. What the hell does that mean? Well, you know what? I help them think about what they can afford in terms of buying their very first home. I help them guide them through all the decisions and all the steps so that they can get a piece of that dream and begin to build equity and begin to build a life for themselves. I'm a professional realtor, right? When you think about your value proposition in terms of crafting kind of like an elevator pitch that describes the benefits that you offer, not just the title that you have or the stuff you do, it kind of changes the whole sense of that, right? Would you agree? Give me some feedback on that. Have you ever thought about your elevator pitch that way? Anybody? I'd love to have some interaction today if we can do that.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, okay. Well, you know what? I'd really encourage you to think about it. And the more unique in the way that you do the things that you do, the kind of cooler that story becomes, right? But we describe what we do. It's a simple, precise description of benefits that the customer gets when working with you. And ideally, when working with you, that they can't easily replicate somewhere else. Because if they can get what you do somewhere else, then what you become is a commodity. And when you're a commodity, the only way that you can differentiate yourself is on price. And that's a dangerous game. Think about bananas. If I went to the supermarket today and I wanted to buy bananas, and there was a table that had 99-cent pound bananas and 69-cent pound bananas, assuming that none of them were organic, assuming that they were all just bananas, what are you going to pay? 99 cents or 69 cents? You're going to pay 69 cents because it's cheaper. In the absence of differentiation, the only way you can differentiate is price, and that is a race to the bottom, right? So what we've got to really think about is, how do I protect my worth, protect my commission by being different and being better and differently better, right? So you've got to be able to convey that, clearly describe it, what you do to earn the fee that you charge, and a good value proposition is a promise. It's a covenant. It's this is what I promise that I will create, right? This is what that looks like. And we'll talk about fiduciary in just a second. The three aspects of service, though, let's talk about it, because great value propositions are built on service. You know, when Gary Keller was writing the book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, one of the things that he really talked about is that top agents across the board, they really have an enormous sense of providing really world-class service. And it's not just transactional management. It's really providing world-class service and experience. So there's a couple of aspects to service that I want to talk about. Number one is purpose, right? Know what is the underlying purpose of why you exist. You know, for some of us, you may be familiar if you go to your team meetings. I think a lot of your market centers start your team meetings with the Bergen County Partners core value and purpose, and the very first purpose statement. And I was in the room the day we crafted this with the consultant group. The question is, why do we exist? And the answer that we came up with is not to sell more houses than the other guy, not to make more money than the other guy. The reason why we exist is we want to be the real estate company that changes people's lives, right? And then how do we do that? Right? Then you start to unpack the value proposition. But the thing that we have to think about is, you know, what's the purpose of real estate for buyers and what's the purpose of real estate for sellers? And it's different for each one. You know, one of the things that we recognize is that generically we can say that the purpose of real estate is about helping to help consumers buy or sell a piece of real property as quickly as they can for the most amount of money as possible with the least aggravation and the least hiccups along the way. That's sort of generic, right? But for buyers, there's a different purpose than there is for sellers. You know, buyers want to get it cheap, sellers want to sell it for more. That's what makes being a dual agent really complicated. If you're a fiduciary and you've got loyalty to all the parties who have very different agendas, it's why dual agency is illegal in most of the United States, but it is not here in New Jersey, right? But what's the purpose? Do you understand what the buyer wants? Because the question I asked you guys earlier is, who determines value? The consumer does. And so we have to make sure that our purpose is in alignment with their belief of value, or we're going to have service that misses the mark, right? Value proposition, let's define it exactly. It's your value proposition distills the services that you provide into a succinct set of benefits, just a checklist of benefits. Here's what I do. Here's how it benefits you. Here's how I do it differently and uniquely than anybody else out there. Here's how you, working with me, you'll get your needs met far better than anyone else in the marketplace, right? It's easy to forget sometimes that some of the things that we really believe are so valuable, the consumers don't always believe. And I will show you some survey information in a couple of slides here, I think, that talks about what consumers tell us they want from real estate agents. I just finished the customer experience class online on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And that was a course that was based on Sue Adler's interviews around the country. Years ago, Sue teamed up with a guy named Rob Hahn, who was a real estate blogger back in the early 2010s, and toured around the country and opened up sort of a speaking tour of real estate consumers talking to real estate agents about what do we do well, what do we not do well. And the feedback was, it was illuminating in a lot of ways, right? Because what consumers kept saying was, you know, a lot of what you think I appreciate, it doesn't really add that much for me. Just assume that I have a Google account. Assume that I can do my own research about properties. So property information, not that useful to me. Assume that I can kind of do some things and search out schools and things like that. So school information, kind of useful, sort of, but I can find that on my own. What I need from you is, what do you know that I can't Google, right? What do you know by being in this industry through your experience? What do you know that I don't know? That's unique value. And that translates into things like, do you know where the off-market listings might be for a buyer? If you're out there and you're prospecting and you find people that are not necessarily looking to sell their house, but if you brought them a buyer, they'd have a conversation. Do you know where those guys are? Because if you do, now you have unique value for buyers that other agents might not. Ron Bagashi, who I love dearly, is really good at that, right? He on the Zamir team. Ron is prospecting all the time. He knows who's out there. He's talked to so many homeowners in their target market of Fair Lawn, and he can tell you what's on the market. He's seen it. He's been in it. What's for sale on the market, for sale by owner. He's seen it. He's been in it, and he's got a little black book in his head of a bunch of properties that he could get you into if you're interested that nobody even knows about. That's value, right? And so how do you communicate what you do? And things, that's something that we have to articulate. Some of the stuff that we think is really valuable that sometimes sellers really don't is our negotiating skills. And that is so counterintuitive for us as professionals, because we believe, and we are right in so many ways, that you have to be a good negotiator. If you look in the couple of slides when I tell you what do buyers and sellers say they want, you have to have good negotiating skills to get me top dollar for my house. You have to have good negotiating skills to help me sell it quickly for the least amount of headache. But when you ask people in surveys, how important is it that your agent be a strong negotiator, it usually comes in the bottom third of things that they identify as important, which is just a mind blower. I think they think that they're good negotiators. I think they believe that they have an attorney who will be a good negotiator. And the truth for us is, and we know this, that, most of the good negotiating that we're doing isn't with the other side in a transaction. Most of the negotiating that we do is with our own client to get our clients to do the right thing. And so it's really hard on a listing consultation to say to a seller, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you're going to want to do things your way, but I'm a really good negotiator. And what you're going to find is you're going to do it my way. That's a really hard sell on a listing consultation. And yet the truth is, a really, really skillful negotiator will connect with people in a way, will communicate with people in a way that gets them to kind of soften up and gets them to be more willing to do things the way they need to be done. There's a quote from the book Never Split the Difference by Christopher Voss, which is one of my favorite negotiation books. Chris was a FBI lead international hostage negotiator for over 10 years. He says, the most dangerous negotiation is the one that you don't even know you're in, because a skillful negotiator is going to be setting the stage and softening you up and priming the pump to do things the way that they want them done, and you're not even going to notice it. A lot of people are concerned about that. There's a little bit of manipulation sometimes, people feeling that, here's what I'll tell you. The salesman and the con man have the same set of skills. The only difference is the con man is using them for his own advantage, and the salesman is using them to the benefit as a fiduciary. Back to the slide though, right? How do we articulate that value proposition to make sure that we're articulating things that they believe are valuable? And how do we really get them to understand the importance of a fiduciary? That I am going to put your interests above my own. That we think about all those old CAR. Remember that acronym from real estate school? Obedience. I'm going to do what you want done, even if it's not what I want to do. Now, as long as it's not illegal and as long as it's not unethical, then I'm going to do what you asked me to do, even though I would prefer that you do something different. And if you're not willing to do what they want to do, think about pricing a home. Is there a number where you would walk away? I hope the answer would be yes, because if you price a home too high, what will happen is that property will get tainted. That property will get sort of the scarlet letter. It will never sell until it gets closer to what market value is. But in the time period of adjusting downward, the market begins to perceive that the property is tainted, that there's something wrong with it, or it would have sold faster. And once that happens, the seller will never get what they could have gotten before, and their equity position will be damaged. And that's a bad thing to do, right? Because that equity for most Americans is all they got. Most people do not have portfolios of investments sitting on Wall Street. Most people do not have syndications where they've got all kinds of, money coming in from all different directions. For most Americans, 2/3, actually it's more like 3/4, their home equity is all they got. That's what they're sending their kids to college with. That's what they're paying for their mama's nursing home with. And if we allow ourselves to price it wrong in the worst situation just to get the listing, we've hurt them in a way that is tragic and is unconscionable. So we need people to understand that as a fiduciary, I am going to be obedient to you. I'm going to be loyal to you. D, disclosure. I'm going to do everything I can to find out all the information that you need so that you can provide the best decision for yourself and for your family, right? C, confidentiality. I'm going to keep everything that you share with me confidential unless you give me authorization to disclose it. And again, that's why being dual agents is hard, because your commitment to keep people's information private and your commitment to disclose it to the other party get really jumbled up when you're representing people in the same transaction. Obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting. How do I handle your money? Right? Am I touching your money? Am I making sure that it's handled properly? R, reasonable care. Am I doing everything that I can to make sure that my skills are current, to make sure that that I know what I'm doing? The danger report was an indictment that this industry is pitifully bad at reasonable care. And the 13 people in this room, this Zoom room, accepted because you're doing everything that you can to get better. And you're taking this seriously and you're working hard. I'm preaching to the choir. I know it. But people have to understand that being a fiduciary matters, that we're not just putting deals together, right? Okay, those are the 3 aspects of service that we've got to be able to articulate. Do we understand what matters to them? Can we articulate our set of benefits so that it resonates with them? And do they understand that we're fiduciaries, right? So what's the underlying purpose of real estate? Let's go through some of these slides. Right? I think I have some slides. Here we go. What do buyers want? And again, this is a 2018 from the Survey of Buyers and Sellers. NAR puts this out every year. You can go to realtor.org. You can download a current copy of this, and it will cost you a little bit of money to purchase it. Once the new version comes out, in the next year, the previous version is usually available for free. But it's interesting, if you look at what buyers want, number one is 52%, help me find the right home, right? It's hands down. Now, I will qualify in these surveys. It's not to say that buyers don't think that the other things are important, but the questions are, of all these things that are important and you can pick only one, what's the most important to you? So all of these things have value, but for 52% of the respondents, what buyers say is, help me find the right house. I can find houses. I don't need your help finding inventory. I need your unique knowledge of the marketplace and the community to help me determine which is the right one for me and why, which means you got to get good at consulting, which means you got to get good at doing a needs analysis. And you've got to get good at helping people to see the inventory in such a way that they can get clarity and not overwhelmed, right? I always find it interesting when you look at the next couple, because help me negotiate the terms of sale, help me get the price negotiations. I think hold on for a second. Yeah, I don't have it. In the actual buyers survey, the number 2 thing for buyers is not to help me get the home at the right price. It's actually number 2 after help me find the right home. It's helped me get it on my terms, and then it's helped me get it at my price. That's really interesting to me. We think getting the home at the right price is more important than anything else. And what buyers tell us again and again and again is, oh no, the terms are actually a little bit more than price. I'm willing to sacrifice on price as long as I get it on my terms, right? We have to understand what buyers want, what buyers value, reputation of the agent, that the agent is honest and trustworthy, right? That the agent is a friend or family member. Well, look, sometimes that's the issue, right? The agent is my mother, and my mother is somebody who, if I don't use her, then I won't come over for Thanksgiving dinner anymore. And she makes really the very best pie. So I'm sorry, the decision is made. It's my mama. It's hard sometimes to overcome that, and there are ways to overcome that, which we'll talk about in another class, perhaps on objection handling. However, it really comes down to this. Do you have a good reputation? Are you honest and trustworthy? Do you know the area? Like, that's what I value, right? On the seller side, it's a little bit more diffused here, but what they want is, help me market the home to potential buyers, help me price the home competitively, and help me get it sold within a specific time frame. These three slices of the pie are almost ties, right? Help me find a buyer for the home. Help me with negotiations. You see, negotiations was only 14%. And if you were to rank order this in terms of what was number one, what was number two, what was number three, we're already in the lower bottom tier here. Negotiations are critical. We've got to have these skills. My point is, just don't try to overhype them. Don't try to make them the center point of what you're claiming your value proposition to be. What you really want to do is you want to be able to show that you can successfully do these things here. I can get you to price the home competitive. I price homes competitively. I get homes sold in a specific time frame. And the negotiation skills are kind of more implied there, right? What do they value? Look, it's hands down, reputation of agent. Agents are trustworthy. Agents, experience. These are the things that they value. So, again, what you want to do is you just want to make sure that you're not building a widget that nobody wants to buy. So many new businesses and new business startups fail, not because they don't have a cool product or a good skill. It's just that the market doesn't see the need for it. If you try to solve a problem that the market doesn't believe it has, you're not going to be able to do it, right? Which is why we go back. And I would encourage you to talk to your friends and family. I'd encourage you to ask people, if you were going to purchase a home, or if you were going to sell your home, if you needed the services of a professional realtor, what would be the biggest challenge that you would want help with? And try to get a sense of what their pinch points are and how you can craft your business to intervene right there, right? That's what you want to do. Now, you got to do a little competitive market research. One of the things you do want to do is you want to take a look and see, who are your competitors? And you guys can't do this on your view of the New Jersey MLS, but your brokers can, and your team leaders can, and probably various people, maybe your agent services people in your market centers might have access to this in the MLS. But there's something that we call market penetration reports. And what a market penetration report does is you simply pick a town and you can determine what individual market share does each agent have. And I think it's really important to know that. If I'm focusing on doing my business in Westfield, let's say where I live, I kind of want to know who the big guns are. I want to know who's the number one listing agent, not only by dollar volume, but by unit volume. Because to me, it's one thing to be able to show that you've sold a lot of dollar volume of homes, but if you get a really big listing, then that's only one person that you convinced to hire you. And it accounts for a lot of the money. I rather look at how many individual listings did you take. To me, that's a more telling example of how much value have you created. And I want to know who are the number one, who are the number two, who are the number three, because then what I want to do is I want to go and I want to study their businesses. I want to go to their website and see how they've pitched their value proposition. I want to kind of find out, what are they telling people is their value proposition, because I have to have a counter for it. And, if you're a solo agent, a lot of times the big gun is a team. And so if you're a solo agent, the thing you're going to try to do is pitch why being a solo agent is better than being a team. And you're going to talk about how, when you're working with a team and you get handed off from one person to the next person, whereas if you work with me, I'm with you from the beginning to end. If you're a team, you're going to talk about why you've got a team of specialists and that every single person is uniquely qualified to do the best in the business for the task that you need, and so far superior than working with a solo agent. You can spin anything you want, right? As a vice president of operations in a big healthcare system and somebody who had to tweak data all the time to try to get grants and to try to get funding, what I learned is that Mark Twain was right? Mark Twain says there's three kinds of lies in the world. There's lies, and then there's damn lies, and then there's statistics. Because if you give me any set of data points and tell me what story you want told, I'll figure out a way to tell it. And I don't mean to sound so cynical about this, but what I do believe is that the people that are doing the most business are your biggest competitors, and you have to know why people are hiring them so that you can start to figure out how do you put together a value proposition that does things differently with them in a way that consumers still value, right? And so do the research, right? Get out there and look, you know, you might even preview houses and go to meet them and see the way they present themselves, to see how they carry themselves. I love to know who the big fish are in my markets. I want to build a relationship with them because the likelihood is they're going to be the ones doing business with me anyway as co-brokers if I start to do more business. And so I want to build rapport, but I want to do my market research, right? Now, your value proposition for us at KW right now is largely based around technology. It was a few years ago that Gary Keller made the bold decision to reclassify Keller Williams as a technology company. And when you think about that, that's just not talk. You know, if you think about what a real estate brokerage is, think about traditional brand names, all the companies under the NRT brand, right? NRT is this big conglomerate real estate company that's based out of Madison, New Jersey, that is the parent company that owns so many real estate brands that people know. They own Coldwell Banker, they own Century 21, they own Sotheby's, they own ERA, they own lots and lots and lots of brands, right? And what happens is these are real estate brokerages, right? And if you think about companies that are in the real estate space that are not brokerages, but they provide services for clients, technology companies, think of the Zillows of the world, think about all the companies that are in the space of direct offers, right? The OfferPads and all these different companies, which are technology companies relying heavily on artificial intelligence, big data aggregation, machine learning as a way of pooling together data in such a way that we can help consumers make different decisions. What Gary said is, I think that the direction is moving towards technology and away from brokerage. I think we need to become a technology company. And so they made the bold decision to totally reclassify what kind of a company they are. Yes, they have a real estate brokerage license, but there's a broker that is connected with Zillow too. There's a broker that's connected with all those tech startups, or they wouldn't have access to the MLS data, right? The technology that we're doing right now is to try to build an interface between consumer, agent, and big data so that we can leverage it to create a better experience for consumers. It's all about what's in it for them. It can't be what makes it good for us. Now, I will tell you that what we're trying to do with Command is to try to build a tool that creates a great user experience for you, the agent, because you are the company's customer. Look, you're a free agent. You could go anywhere to work. You know, the benefit of being an independent contractor, what you give up is you give up a predictable, I won't say predictable salary. You give up a regular salary. You give up healthcare benefits. You give up 401k benefits. You give up paid vacation. And what you get is the freedom to work wherever you choose. And so in that kind of an environment, it's really incumbent on the broker to add enough value that you choose to be here. Because if we don't do that and you go somewhere else, then shame on us, right? But what we do believe is that the Command experience is already and is becoming even better at giving the tools so that agents can run their business faster, more efficiently, in a more streamlined way, and to create a customer experience that is built on artificial intelligence and machine learning so the experience gets better and better and better. And what does that look like? It means this: when people download your app and they are looking at property on your website or your app, it starts to look at things and says, you know what, George, seems like you're spending more time looking at homes that have hardwood floors than homes that have carpeting. And so the next time you do a property search, I'm going to kind of feed you the ones with hardwood floors in your price range first, because I think that's what you're going to want. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to let you know, George, hey, you know what? Hal's looking at homes. He seems to have more interest in homes with hardwood floors. Maybe you should talk to him about that. you suddenly start looking at homes that are in Glen Rock, and that's not one of the towns that you have kind of identified for him in his neighborhood search. You may want to talk to him about Glen Rock. That's what this experience is evolving into, and it's just a better experience for consumers and a better experience for agents. And if we can help people understand how the use of technology will make it easier for buyers to find and appreciate their product of their home, how we can help buyers to understand that our technology will help them have a better buying experience, then that's part of our value proposition. And that's something that we really need to talk about. I see the chat box lit up, so let me take a look at this for a second. Gary should make a version of Command to be leased to other brokerages on a subscription basis. You know what? You're not the first person who said that. He has no interest in doing that, at least not right now. I think what he wants to do is he wants people to, if they want the product, they'll come and join Keller Williams. I think that's what he's thinking. Anyway, that said, if we were in a classroom environment, then the Ignite session would not be scheduled for 1 hour. The classroom environment, Ignite, would be, actually, it's a 4-hour class. 1 hour is this content. The other 3 hours are practice and role play and lead generation and all the different things that sometimes people are doing, I hope, in other venues. But one of the things that we would be doing if we were in the classroom environment is taking the activity time to start to craft out what is your unique value proposition. So since we don't have the ability to do that here now, I would encourage you to think about that and maybe spend a little time with that through the weekend and really start to think about, you know, who are the clients that I want to work with? You know, in the course Lead Generation 3612-3, which is the follow-up course to Ignite, when this one ends, we move right into that one. The very, very first part of Lead Gen is to start to try to figure out who is actually your ideal client. Because we recognize that we can't really be everything to everyone. And if we try to be everything to everyone, we're going to become a generalist. And in a competitive market environment, people with generalized skills are just not as valuable as people with specialized skills. It's the same in every industry. Doesn't matter whether you're in medicine or whether you're in finance. If you've got specialty skills, people will pay for them. If you have generalist skills, meh, I'm not paying for it. And so what we start with in the Lead Gen course is to try to figure out who exact is your best client. Who do you want to work with? Who kind of resonates with you? Who do you want to target? And what would they look like? And why would you be the one that connects with them in a way that it has the unique value that they would be looking for? And I'm not looking to serve everybody. I'm looking to serve the right buddies. You know, Simon Sinek, who is a great author and thinker in the business world, says the purpose of business is not to get into a relationship with people who need the product or service that you provide. The purpose of business is to build a business community of like-minded individuals, people who kind of get you and kind of think the way that you think, and then engage that relationship over time and nurture that relationship over time so that when the time comes that they need the product and the service that you provide, you're it. There's nobody else they're going to talk to because they've already bought you. Now they're buying what you do, right? And what I would encourage you to do is start to think about, man, who am I looking for, right? Who do I enjoy spending time with? Who am I not looking for? Who do I not want to work with? You know, I had I'm going to fess up. I had a certain client type that I was trying to work with. For me, the ideal client was a family that was a family with kids at home that was looking to create an in-town experience with a walkable downtown and a community that had provisions for things like after-school activities and sports and all that stuff. That sort of small town vibe was who I was looking for. And so I chose as my geographic target towns that I felt reflected that. And I picked Westfield and Cranford and Fanwood and certain towns that I thought fit that mold. And then I started to say, you know what? I'm not looking for everybody. I'm looking for that person. And so I crafted my marketing and my prospecting strategies to try to put me in front of those people. But I also had a no jerks policy. And that's just, it's just me. If I thought you were a jerk, if I didn't like being around you, I didn't need to work with you. Just because
I wish I had listened to that advice.
You know what, Patty? You know,
that's a hard lesson to learn.
It's a hard one to learn. You know what? I do remember one time, and I just remember one time in particular. I was on this listing consultation, and it was a husband and wife and a little girl, and the little girl was in the kitchen doing her homework. and mom and dad were at the dining room table with me, and we were going through the consultation. And the little girl, who was probably about 8, came running into the room, and she started to, tug on daddy's shirt. And daddy, she needed help with her homework. And daddy, not only was he dismissive of her, but he was really abusive of her. And the way he treated her and the things he called her, I just watched this little girl crumple.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is ugly. And then about another 15 minutes go by, and she comes running in. This time she goes to mommy, and she pulls on mommy's shirt, and she says, "Mommy, I need help." And so mommy excused herself and went into the kitchen to help with the homework for just a minute. And the things that he said to me about what a crappy mother she was, I was done. You know what? I'm like, we're done. I'm out. He's like, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm not your guy. I'm just not your guy." And look, you get to decide. But what you really want to do is you want to decide who would be the best fit for you. What would be the unique value that you could provide for them, that they just would think is the best thing in the world, and let that inform how you craft your marketing and value proposition and value statements. We would be doing that activity if we had time here today. I'm going to ask you guys to think about it on your own, right? And start to map that out. If you ever want to tweak your UVP, then just jump on an office hour with me. I have them 3 hours a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Just jump on and we'll do it. And if you don't want to do that, if there's other people in the room, then just jump on in the office hour and say, "Hey, do you have some time in your schedule that maybe we can put an hour together this week?" And I'll take a look, and we'll do it right together on Zoom, just you and I. But let's do that, right? You got to be able to deliver value that people want. It distinguishes you with the information that you know. It creates a unique seller experience, and experience is everything. We really are in an experience economy. It's not enough for businesses anymore to just be good at what you do and to deliver an outcome. You have to wrap that outcome up in a really good experience. You've got to become what Seth Godin calls a purple cow, right? What's a purple cow? He's a marketing guy. His book, Purple Cow, is up there somewhere on my bookshelf. What he says is, cows are boring. And they're big and they're smelly and they're black and they're white and they've got spots and they're brown and all these different things. And he says, but if you're driving across the country and you come across a farm and you see a cow that's purple, you're stopping the car. You're going to get out your camera. You're going to take a picture. You're going to put it on Instagram and Facebook, and you're going to tell everybody in the world that you saw a purple cow, because a purple cow is truly remarkable, right? Remarkable meaning worthy of talking about. How can you create a unique customer experience that is just so far beyond what people would have ever expected that they can't wait to talk about you, that they can't wait to tell their friends how cool you are? And it's partly about being more knowledgeable. It's partly about doing things differently. It's about doing the traditional things in unique and unexpected ways. And it's about doing things that they never even saw coming, that they can't wait, that just go, wow. It's interesting. In the customer experience class that we just finished up, one of the videos that we shared was of a buyer who bought his home in the San Francisco Bay Area. And the moderator had asked him about his experience. And he says, it was okay. I got the house that I wanted. I got it in the neighborhood that I wanted, actually for the price and the terms that I wanted. And the moderator said, that sounds like a great experience. And he said, meh. He says, look, I got what I wanted because I hired a professional. And that's what I expected. But she didn't do anything special. She just did her job. She didn't do anything different than anybody else would have done. That's the reality of consumers today. And what are we going to do about it, right? Do the things that other people do in unexpected ways and do things they never saw coming. Let me give you a practical example of how that could look. I recently was talking to a friend, an agent, and she did this, which is what's making me think of this one right now. What would happen is, comes a point in a transaction where the buyer and the seller are clear to close, and we need to do a walkthrough. We do a final walkthrough of the home before the closing. Typically, we do it the morning of or the night before. And the goal is to go through the house to make sure that the house is going to be delivered in the condition expected. It's not to go back in to relitigate every inspection item. It's not to go back and say, ooh, I didn't notice this before. Now I want to get compensated for it. It's to go back and say, look, I want to make sure that the house is what I expected it to be. I expected it to be empty. I expected it to be broom swept. I expected that the things that I saw that were included in the home are still here, right? I don't expect stuff to be here that you're supposed to take out. And so we do a walkthrough, and we walk through and we take a look, and please make sure that you're doing things like flushing the toilets, making sure that the toilet didn't get blocked up, that somebody who was cleaning up the bathroom one final time threw a handful of paper towels down the toilet and flushed them, and now you've got a big clog to deal with. Flush the toilet. Make sure that the water is running and the water is hot. Make sure the air conditioning is working in the summer and the heat in the winter. But what you're going to go through is this house, and you're going to recognize that broom swept is kind of gross. When you take everything out, this house isn't quite as cool looking anymore as it did when all staged and perfect. And so what she did was, after they did the walkthrough, between the time that the walkthrough happened and they went to the closing, and a lot of times these walkthroughs are in the morning, and they would go to like an hour or two later to the attorney's office. It would be a couple of hours until the closing. And she knew that after the closing happened and the buyers got their keys, where were they going? They were going right back to the house. And so what she did was, in those 3 or 4 hours in between, she contacted her cleaning service, and she got 2 or 3 people to come out, sometimes 3 or 4, depending on the size of the house. And they scrubbed the bathroom, and they scrubbed the toilets, and they scrubbed the kitchen sink, and they washed the kitchen floor. And sometimes they steam cleaned the carpets, and they walked into the house, and the house glistened and it smelled great. And on the countertop was a big bouquet of flowers with a note that said, "Welcome to your new home." How do you think those buyers felt when they left the closing and walked into the house and saw that? That's what it means to be a purple cow. That is something that is just so unusual. And let's face it, does it cost some money to do that? Yes. A couple $100. I can't think of a couple of hundred of a marketing thing that you could do for the same price that would have more impact than that does. Because everybody, when they talk about the fact that they just moved in, we close, you're not going to believe what my agent did. Oh my God, she's so cool. That's what you're trying to aim for when you're creating unusual experiences. And there's companies out there that have really mastered that. Disney, the Four Seasons, Ritz-Carlton, there's companies out there that have just really mastered that. That is a place in a transactional environment like real estate that you really want to be thinking about. You don't have to do a lot of those things, but you should be doing a couple to create a stellar experience that sets you apart. So we have about 3 or 4 minutes before we have to wind down today. You know by now that the last thing I ask you to think about is any ahas, right? Anything that you heard today that causes you to think differently than you did before, that maybe sets a little light bulb on in your head, or kind of gives you a challenge to think about something that you're going to do differently. I'd love to kind of round out this week on Friday today with a couple of ahas, either about this session or any of the other sessions that we had this week. Anything? I hope there's a couple. Go ahead.
I like that flowers at the end. That was really good.
That was really cool. You know, my wife, when she heard about that, she's like, God, I wish my agent did that. Because, you know, nobody wants to move into somebody else's ick, right? And
Right.
even though we clean the house and we broom sweep, it's not that clean. And so clean it, right? It's special. It's fun. And there's a million things like that you could do at different points in the transaction, right? But think of a couple of them, right?
Yeah, it's like people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And we all know that saying, right? Yeah. But little things like that can mean a customer and referrals forever.
Oh my God, it will. It absolutely will. It's how you build brand loyalty. That's how you do it. You're never gonna, you know, there's a saying in the MREA, and one of the myths that Gary talks about in the MREA is he says that agents believe that their customers are loyal to them. And the truth is, we build relationships, we build friendships, we nurture those over time, and it can become a real personal relationship. But make no mistake, from a business standpoint, they're not loyal to you, the person. They're loyal to the standards and the outcomes that you create for them. The moment your inability to deliver the goods in a great customer experience happens, then as much as they love you, they're not going to use you anymore, right? So think about that. Get creative. Any other ahas? I see a question here. Miriam says, from a legal point, is it okay for real estate or cleaning service to go into the house and have the keys after they handed the keys to the buyer? That is something that's a great question. What she always did is she made those arrangements with the listing agent's consent, and she used cleaning services that were bonded. And so that if there was ever a problem, the cleaning service was on the hook to address it. And so, yeah, great question. You know, that's something you want to think through, but that's how she addressed it. And very rarely did she find any pushback on that at the end. And if she did, then she would just find something else cool to do. That's all, right? But she made it a point to do something that they wouldn't expect, that nobody else would have done, so that they could say how cool she was, right?